Vladimir Jabotinsky, The Iron Wall, 1923. 1. There can be no voluntary agreement between ourselves and the Palestine Arabs. It is utterly impossible to obtain the voluntary consent of the Palestine Arabs for converting Palestine from an Arab country into a country with a Jewish majority. 2. My readers have a general idea of the history of colonization in other countries. I suggest that they consider all the precedents with which they are acquainted, and see whether there is one solitary instance of any colonization being carried on with the consent of the native population. There is no such precedent. The native populations, civilized or uncivilized, have always stubbornly resisted the colonists, irrespective of whether they were civilized or savage. And it made no difference whatever whether the colonists behaved decently or not. 3. This is equally true of the Arabs. Our peacemongers are trying to persuade us that the Arabs are either fools, whom we can deceive by masking our real aims, or that they are corrupt and can be bribed to abandon to us their claim to priority in Palestine, in return for cultural and economic advantages. I repudiate this conception of the Palestinian Arabs. 4. We may tell them whatever we like about the innocence of our aims, watering them down and sweetening them with honeyed words to make them palatable, but they know what we want, as well as we know what they do not want. They feel at least the same instinctive jealous love of Palestine, as the old Aztecs felt for ancient Mexico, and the Sioux for their rolling prairies. 5. To imagine, as our Arabophiles do, that they will voluntarily consent to the realization of Zionism, in return for the moral and material conveniences which the Jewish colonist brings with him, is a childish notion, which has at bottom a kind of contempt for the Arab people. It means that they despise the Arab race, which they regard as a corrupt mob that can be bought and sold, and are willing to give up their fatherland for a good railway system. There is no justification for such a belief. It may be that some individual Arabs take bribes. But that does not mean that the Arab people of Palestine as a whole will sell that fervent patriotism that they guard so jealously, and which even the Papuans will never sell. 6. Every native population in the world resists colonists as long as it has the slightest hope of being able to rid itself of the danger of being colonized. 7. There is only one thing the Zionists want, and it is that one thing that the Arabs do not want, for that is the way by which the Jews would gradually become the majority, and then a Jewish government would follow automatically, and the future of the Arab minority would depend on the goodwill of the Jews, and a minority status is not a good thing, as the Jews themselves are never tired of pointing out. So there is no misunderstanding. 8. The Zionists want only one thing, Jewish immigration, and this Jewish immigration is what the Arabs do not want. 9. Colonization carries its own explanation, the only possible explanation, unalterable and as clear as daylight to every ordinary Jew and every ordinary Arab. Colonization can have only one aim, and Palestine Arabs cannot accept this aim. It lies in the very nature of things, and in this particular regard nature cannot be changed. 10. We cannot offer any adequate compensation to the Palestinian Arabs in return for Palestine. And therefore, there is no likelihood of any voluntary agreement being reached. 11. Zionist colonization must either stop, or else proceed regardless of the native population. Which means that it can proceed and develop only under the protection of a power that is independent of the native population, behind an iron wall, which the native population cannot breach. That is our Arab policy, not what we should be, but what it actually is, whether we admit it or not. What need, otherwise, of the Balfour Declaration? Or of the Mandate? Their value to us is that outside power has undertaken to create in the country such conditions of administration and security that if the native population should desire to hinder our work, they will find it impossible. 12. and we are all of us without any exception, demanding day after day that this outside power should carry out this task vigorously and with determination. In this matter there is no difference between our militarists and our vegetarians. Except that the first prefer that the iron wall should consist of Jewish soldiers, and the others are content that they should be British. We all demand that there should be an iron wall. 13. In the second place, this does not mean that there cannot be any agreement with the Palestine Arabs. What is impossible is a voluntary agreement. As long as the Arabs feel that there is the least hope of getting rid of us, they will refuse to give up this hope in return for either kind words or for bread and butter, because they are not a rabble, but a living people. And when a living people yields in matters of such a vital character, it is only when there is no longer any hope of getting rid of us, because they can make no breach in the iron wall. 14. The only way to obtain such an agreement is the iron wall, which is to say a strong power in Palestine that is not amenable to any Arab pressure. In other words, the only way to reach an agreement in the future is to abandon all idea of seeking an agreement at present. 15. But it is absurd to expect the Arabs to have the mentality of an impartial judge, for in this conflict they are not the judges, but one of the contending parties. And after all, our chief question is whether the Arabs, even if they believed in peaceful collaboration, they would agree to have any neighbors, even good neighbors, in the country which they regard as their own. 16. So why should a nation that is perfectly content with its isolation admit to its country even good neighbors in any considerable number? I want neither your honey nor your sting, is a reasonable answer. 17. Let us consider for a moment the point of view of those to whom this seems immoral. We shall trace the root of the evil to this, that we are seeking to colonize a country against the wishes of its population, in other words, by force. Everything else that is undesirable grows out of this root with axiomatic inevitability. What then is to be done? 18. The simplest way out would be to look for a different country to colonize. Like Uganda. But if we look more closely into the matter, we shall find that the same evil exists there too. Uganda also has a native population, which consciously or unconsciously, as in every other instance in history, will resist the coming of the colonizers. 19. There are no more uninhabited islands in the world. In every oasis there is a native population settled from times immemorial, who will not tolerate an immigrant majority or an invasion of outsiders. 20. A voluntary reconciliation with the Arabs is out of the question either now or in the future. If you wish to colonize a land in which people are already living, you must provide a garrison for the land, or find some rich man or benefactor who will provide a garrison on your behalf. Or else give up your colonization, for without an armed force which will render physically impossible any attempt to destroy or prevent this colonization is impossible, not difficult, not dangerous, but impossible. 21. Zionism is a colonization adventure, and therefore it stands or falls by the question of armed force. It is important to speak Hebrew, but, unfortunately, it is even more important to be able to shoot, or else I am through with playing at colonizing.